Sorry.
All right, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fight or Flight Overcoming Fears Study Abroad event, Culture Shock and Relationship Building Abroad. Um, as the title entails, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the poll that you guys answered, we're going to discuss those results at the end. And we hope to be able to address some of the concerns you maybe put into that survey, as well as maybe talk about some things you might not have thought about, and just get the conversation going about one of the biggest fears people have when it comes to studying abroad, which is the culture and the relationships you build within it. So I'm one of the presenters along with Logan. I was a 2024 Sakura Scholar. That is the American University Study Abroad program, joined with a Japanese university. So I studied at American University for 2 years, and then I studied in Japan for 2 years. And my co-presenter,
Hi, everyone. I'm Logan. Like Sophia, I studied in Japan. We're going to try to give advice that's not just specific to Japan, but based just on a lot of our generic experiences around, meeting people and having to reorient ourselves around different customs, as Japan can be pretty different from the US when it comes to relationships. Um, and yeah, I'm from the state of Virginia, and I'm looking forward to meeting y'all and talking with y'all.
yeah. So I guess we can talk about what this is all about. Um,
Yeah, I can introduce this again.
okay.
So here's sort of three little mantras or things I wish people had told me before I studied abroad. And I think one thing that people sort of approach culture shock with can be fear. And I think that's incorrect. Culture shock just means that you're learning. It means you're encountering something unexpected and you're just having to adjust to it. So that's why I put this, that culture shock can be a sign of growth. Don't take it as a sign that you'll never learn something or never get used to something. Rather, take it as a sign that you're stepping beyond your comfort zone and take that as encouragement. Um, Similarly, I think a lot of people, when they think about studying abroad, they get a lot of anxiety about relationships and how am I going to make friends? But I don't think people really anticipate that domestic students, that is, students of your host country, really want to meet you. Students of your host university, the people in your city, are really curious about the country that you're coming from, and are really curious about the cultures that you represent. And so I think that's a factor that we sometimes forget is the cultures and the histories that we bring with us when we go abroad. And so don't downplay yourself. You are interesting and you get to bring things to the table too. And this last part is about support systems. Um, I think people generally are aware of the fact that you should be in touch with family and friends, but I think people don't anticipate the fact that you'll have people who are studying abroad with you that can be your support system. Whether that's people from the same university, the same country, or just who are also new to the country that you're new to, and are also going through the same culture shocks of, wow, this is different, and learning it with you. So these are all things I think that are applicable to sort of any study abroad situation and really helpful to sort of reorienting your mindset and keeping you pushing you towards a more healthy approach when it comes to learning. All right, I think that's all for me. Next slide.
So the agenda is that me and Logan are going to go through four different types of, I guess, situations of culture shock that we went through. We're going to take turns. They're a bit interactive. If you guys don't want to talk, you can use the chat as well, but it'd be great if you guys, interacted with us a little bit. But no pressure, don't worry. So we'll get started with the first situation, which is gift giving. And I've also put the addition of acquaintances because for me, the major culture shock that came with gift giving, at least especially for Japan, was that gifts were exchanged between more than just people you were close to and knew or at least could anticipate a gift from. And I thought that this would be an important thing to bring up for any culture as I meet more people from around the world. The dynamics, especially when it comes to gifts, really change depending on who you're talking to and who it's with. So, to convey that array of different experience, I have three different scenarios that I myself went through, and I'm going to read them. And then, if you guys can guess who gave the gift in this scenario and then why they might have given that gift, that'd be fun. Again, you don't have to, but so in the first scenario, you have visited a religious site and you said hello to the housekeeper and you're asking them a few questions. That's just the first scenario. The second scenario is that you're at a local coffee shop, person next to you tries to strike up conversation and you're welcome to it, so you talk with them. And then the third is that you went on a weekend trip and now it's Monday morning and you're returning to your office. So pick a scenario. You can pick multiple scenarios, but just let us know who you think gave a gift in this scenario and why they gave the gift. Do you think I gave somebody a gift? Do you think that person gave me a gift? And why do you think that happened? And I'll give it like a good few seconds. Logan, you're also welcome to guess. Or Dahlia.
I think in scenario three, you would be giving a gift to your coworkers from the place that you traveled.
Mhm. Do you
But
have an inkling why, or it just kind of feels right?
well, I mean, specifically for Japan, if you're talking about like omiyage, sort of like as a souvenir.
Hmm.
But I don't really know for the others. I guess for scenario one, I would think about, I guess you could bring something to you could bring something to the religious site, but I'd think of that more as a place where you'd buy a souvenir or a gift. Uh, I don't really know though, and I don't know about like the coffee shop. I would guess not, but I don't know.
Sure, it's okay. Well, you got the third one definitely right. The entire concept of omiyage, which is if you go on a trip or you go anywhere, you're supposed to bring something back in Japan. You're supposed to give like a little trinket or a gift to your coworkers as a way to show them that you were thinking about them. You're appreciating that they're working while you are just out and about hanging out on a train or whatever, you know? And oh, I see somebody in the chat. I gave gift to housekeeper, and then scenario three is sus of bring a gift out of nowhere. Dahlia, shush. It was right. What was right? So, scenario one is actually the opposite, and I have little phrases for each one that I've kind of heard said to explain what I experienced. So, in the first one, it was a bit of a version of something called omotenashi, which is basically welcome gifts or thank you gifts to show humility. Basically, the business owner or the housekeeper, they're really thankful that you came, that you showed interest and that you engaged with them. And if it's not busy, if you're the last person of the day, the first person of the day, if it's hot out or cold out, there can be times where they'll be really happy that you showed up and they want to give you something as appreciation. It's happened to me a few times. And usually it's just them showing that they're really happy that I went there and I showed interest in them. And then scenario two is the rarest of scenarios that's ever happened to me, but it has happened more than once, which is strange to me. But in Japan, there's this idea of ichigo ichie, which is basically you meet everybody for a reason and you should cherish that reason essentially. And you can meet a stranger once and that one meeting could signify an entire change in your life. And so you should hold that memory close. And so the picture here actually is from when I went to Nagasaki and I did have that coffee conversation with this random woman in the coffee shop because we were both alone. And at the end of the conversation, she just, pulled out some notebooks and was like, here you go. Please remember this conversation. I'm so happy we got to talk. And it was her way of showing appreciation for the conversation we had. So I'm wondering now that I've explained these situations, Do you think they're really shocking? Would they make you uncomfortable? Are they shocking and exciting? Or would you just really like to experience this and you're not entirely sure how to feel? What are we feeling from these events? I can tell you all three of them have been exciting and also dreadfully scary to me because I get anxious very easily. I'll move on if nobody wants to share their feelings. But that's okay because any way that you react to these gifts is okay. For the basic reasons of gift giving, especially among people that you're not really close with, isn't very common in America. So a type of innate discomfort in those types of situations is okay. Even if you're in that culture, though, sometimes gift giving can just be unexpected, even if you know there's a tradition around it. And so even if you might be expecting a gift, you can still be shocked by it, and people aren't going to find that very strange. And that goes for any culture. Just because you're in a culture doesn't mean everybody lives that same lifestyle. So that's always interesting and important to remember. And then finally, it's okay if you don't even understand what I'm talking about when I say that I got anxious, because in the long run, memories of gifts are always good, even if you're not expecting them and if you're not sure why you're getting them. So, I guess the biggest takeaway from this type of culture shock that you could get is that when it comes to different gift customs in different countries, just remember that you can research and prepare ahead of time, but you don't need to overwhelm yourself because you're new to the culture and people around you know you're new to the culture. And if anything, they'll be appreciative that you're at least interacting with how they see appropriate exchange of appreciation, you know?
All right. And now moving on to my section. So I'll talk a little bit about joining clubs and navigating that hierarchy. So you can go to the next slide, please. So one club I joined was Aikido, which is a grappling martial art. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, what does this image tell you? So you have three rows of people wearing martial arts uniforms. Do you think you can tell any differences among the uniforms and the people wearing them? Do you think you can tell anything about their age, their rank, how well respected they are in the club by their position? Any guesses would be appreciated. You can either unmute, drop a guess in the chat. Um,
I would guess the three people wearing the sort of black pants in the middle are of a higher standing, but I don't really know.
yeah, it's a
It's
good
also
guess.
kind of hard, like I can't really zoom in or anything, but I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Any other guesses? Yeah, your guess is actually spot on. You see these three people in the center. One of them is holding the photo of the person who founded Aikido. So they are very well respected. They're black belts, which is why they have those black pants on. And then if you can see all the way in the back in the third row, fifth from the left is me. I'm wearing a beginner's uniform, which is all white with a white belt. So to me, when I entered this space, there are very clear differences that I could see. And that sort of alarmed me to, oh, this is not how I'm used to seeing clubs operate in the US, where people are very sort of on the same level, and there's not really a clear hierarchy to how things work. People are just in this to have fun and to be with each other. And that's not what I thought when I first got into this space. So next slide, please. And so I just used stock images here, but forgive me. So there are a couple of different roles I identified, and got really stressed about, oh my God, how do I give people the respect that they deserve? Because there's a teacher who comes in once a week, and he's so knowledgeable, and I felt bad if I was to make a mistake and disrespect him. And there's the club president who made a big effort about introducing me to all the club members. And then there were all these upperclassmen, underclassmen who were rotating in the club and helping me around. And then I felt like I was separate from this hierarchy, and I was like, where do I fit in, and how do I, you know, relate to all these people the right way? And that created a lot of stress for me because I don't think um, you can really relate to someone the correct way, if that makes sense. You can go to the next slide, Sophia. Because in actuality, what I perceived and this sort of stereotype that I brought with me about martial arts was this very rigid way of doing things, of a pyramid structure where someone at the top has sort of absolute power in the club and people at the bottom have to do everything they say. But what I wasn't aware of when I went into the club is actually one of the most um, decentralized clubs at the school I was at. People were very laid back. There was a concerted effort made by leadership, even though they were in sort of formalized leadership position, to connect with people at sort of a lower like rank than them. And so I got sort of shocked and awed by these visible differences. And I didn't realize that those were just formalities. And they didn't actually matter when it comes to um, how I talk to people. Because the sort of web that I've made here on this chart is trying to illustrate the fact that I got to interact with these people on sort of a like a lateral basis. Even though I had no experience with Aikido, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had just joined the club. Um, I got to do a lot of cool experiences and got to teach people and lead people, even though that wasn't something I was sure I would be able to do since I felt so new. So a lot of the time at this club was spent sort of unlearning things I had brought with me and being receptive to being like, wow, I didn't realize that these people were so willing to accept me. And I didn't realize that they had all of these, how do I say, changes made specifically to incorporate people like me who sort of had no idea what was going on, international students who just wanted to experience Aikido and learn from it for a short time and then leave. And they were so kindly willing to accept me for a short time and incorporate me into their club. So a lot of what I was learning was just how to measure my own reaction and just sort of take in what was actually going on at this club, which was really interesting to reflect on. And I think that's it for this section.
I forgot I was muted. Okay, cool. So the next session will be mine, and we're talking about communal living while abroad and your new neighbors. And there's me over here, surrounded by a lot of people that I still talk to actually, and they're from all over the world, and we all came from very different backgrounds. And you guys will learn pretty quickly, I feel like, that living abroad and experiencing culture shock is as much about experiencing other cultures coming into the country as it is experiencing that single country's culture. Um, so, whenever you're in a dorm, even in America, it's new people, new routines, new experiences, new rules, new expectations, and new boundaries. And you have the pros, which are potlucks, movie and game nights, holiday parties, sharing meals, all the cool stuff that lets you share your culture with other people. But with that is also a lot of shock when it comes to how people live and how people feel it's appropriate to interact with their neighbors or with people they're just living with in general. And so you have to be able to hold yourself and others accountable, counteract your own culture and other cultures' negative living habits. You have to keep awareness of people's mental health state, especially in countries where mental health might not be such an open topic to talk about. You also have to find a way to prioritize yourself as well as the new friends you've made. Because such hyperdiversity in such close approximation, it can overwhelm you very quickly, even if it feels really fun and you have this sense of missing out if you miss a single moment. because making friends is always worth it and you always want to be making friends, but those new dynamics of not only people and their differences, but cultures and their differences, it can tire you out quickly. And it can also make you very shocked about how you react to other cultures and their lifestyle habits. And so, kind of in that vein, I have two things that I found when I was living in an international dorm that were the biggest clashes and issues between people, especially if they came from different countries and lifestyles. And then two things that really helped our community kind of keep keep themselves in check and kind of temperature check everybody and how we were doing. The two biggest clashes were cleanliness and manners. How people react to where they're living is a direct reflection of how they lived before. So you have a lot of people who maybe just based on how they were raised expect a very cleanly environment and house, and they can have really negative reactions when it's not like that. And other people who don't care at all. Manners are another thing where one thing someone might think is fun, another person is really not going to like. And I do have an example of that. The Americans, me, and other people in my dorm, when we make food, we listen to music. And I feel like that's a pretty common American experience is to have music playing when you do things with people. But to some people in my dorm, it was seen as kind of rude because it's supposed to be a communal cooking space. And having music playing out loud without headphones was kind of a thing where people were like, I'm trying to mind my business and your business is in my face. So that was kind of a thing we had to learn to pass through. And that kind of moves into helpful mediations. The first is social events. This is kind of the best place to have moderated cross-cultural communication and connecting. It helps you learn about the people around you without doing a litmus test of if it will make them angry or not. Because they're going to be honest and open about their life and what they've experienced so far, and you're not testing out in real time whether your lived experience matches theirs. And with that comes the fact that not everybody's experience is the same. And sometimes if you overextend your social battery, it can make it really hard for you to understand where people are coming from because you yourself and your emotions might not be in sync. So kind of one of my biggest things that I tell people is when you live in these types of environments, you have to make sure you're balancing your time with others' times and giving yourself time to adjust to the new world you're living in. You can be there for 2 years like I was and still on the last day still feel overwhelmed by some things. So just always remember to be conscious of people. You will be shocked by a lot of things you learn, but if you balance your own time and personal needs with learning others, you'll be okay, you know? And you'll make new friends and learn new food recipes and all that other fun stuff.
All right, that brings us to our last section, which is about friendship and intimacy. Next slide, please. So I wanted to ask you, Mr. Logan versus Logan. Is there a difference? What is calling me Mr. Logan versus calling me Logan mean? Any guesses from the audience?
Well, Mr. would be more formal.
Exactly. Right. So adding that prefix or title, Mr., is a pretty formal way of addressing someone in English. And I feel like in America, we don't really do that often. Unless someone's a teacher, even then we tend to call them by their first name nowadays. And I feel like that's pretty relaxed. But in other countries, that can be pretty different. Can you go to the next slide, Sophia? Because we were in Japan, I got used to having a lot of different titles introduced to me, and specifically about depending on the situation, even if I was really close to someone, best friends, I would still have to call them Mr. in a situation, which felt really uncomfortable to me. So these are sort of all these titles that I never really used in English. I all of a sudden had to attach new meaning to in a different language. And this is something I want to sort of draw attention to when you're studying abroad is even though in my native language, these had very difficult meanings and meanings that created a lot of discomfort when I would try to use them in a similar situation. In the context I was in and the people I was around, entirely different and actually very important to showing how much I loved and respected them. Next slide, please. So yeah, just three general rules I would throw around. When in doubt, just be super polite. It never hurts to be more formal. And two, you can always check. You can always ask how people want to be referred to. And three, if you mess up, if you say the wrong thing, you can always apologize. Um, as you are new to the situation, people might be new to you. This might be their first time interacting with someone from your culture. So don't be afraid to make this a learning experience for the both of you. All right, I feel like that's all for this section. All right, so one thing I wanted to highlight from the polls was that we didn't really have a certain trend for people meeting new people. People weren't necessarily anxious or confident meeting people, which I think is good. You have to have a certain awareness of striding yourself into new situations and having to meet new faces. And second, I think this is really important. People felt really comfortable asking others to explain things to them. I think as we've walked through this presentation, just having to pause a conversation or ask people afterward the fact, hey, that went down. I don't know what that meant. Can you please explain that to me? Is a really important and really common interaction I had to have while I was abroad. I wish I could tell you it's not like that. I wish I could tell you I could just look something up beforehand, be very graceful and know it all. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Um,
Open communication is like the most important thing abroad. Even if it makes you nervous, in the long run, it's worth it.
mhm.
But so with our last few minutes, I guess, because we had to use our own accounts for this Zoom, which means it will end abruptly. Why did it switch? There we go. Are there any questions that you guys have for us of maybe things we didn't cover or something we covered you want to know more about? What my favorite color is? How's the weather? It's cold.
I had a question about like living in the international dorms.
Mhm.
You mentioned like habits and stuff. I'm guessing like does that involve like in terms of like living with other people, like did you guys have to deal with any sort of like what was it, chores, like chores that you had to like resolve with everyone, and how did that go?
Yeah, so actually this picture right here, it's a picture from my cleaning duties. So at the dorm that I did, we had a schedule and it would move down the hallway of the dorms. And if it was your day to clean, you had to clean the communal spaces. It's pretty common and expected to just clean up after yourself in general, but I feel like a lot of dorms also have a built-in system where they expect you to do some cleaning. And if they don't, somebody is going to be enforcing that upon everybody anyway. So I wouldn't, if you're worried about people not doing it by themselves, there usually is a schedule people keep. Um, but sometimes people don't keep it. And that's kind of where the whole keeping people accountable thing comes into play pretty heavily, especially abroad, when only you and your neighbors can really keep you accountable for that type of stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
I guess question specific. I'm guessing you since you said you're a soccer scholar, you went to Ritsumeikan. Just more specifically, if you have any specific advice about Ritsumeikan or either of you about Japan.
Um, Take it in strides. You know, everybody there kind of knows that you are visiting and learning the culture as you go. And so you're given a lot of grace. And I think it's not a bad thing to give yourself the grace as well to learn as much as you can and not be afraid of messing up. And if you do mess up, people will let you know. And they're not going to be mean about it, but they're going to let you know. Which honestly, maybe the first time is a little uncomfortable, but it's not, it doesn't have to be a bad thing to be told if you need to do something or not doing something. And Ichimeikan has a very big international body, so they're kind of used to a diverse community.
Yeah, real quick here, since we're short on time, but I would just say striking that balance between people who are from your country and people who are new to or from the host country, you really have to set aside time and be like, I need to do something new, go to a club, go out into the city and try something because it's really easy to get stuck with people from your country and stay in the same rut of things and not experience anything
Yeah.
new. So it's easy to become a homebody because anxiety and other things can become pretty dominant.
Yeah. And volunteer and sign up for events that are on campus.
Yeah,
They're
a
always
lot
fun.
of community events you can do that are really fun.
If you have any more questions before this ends, there's our email.